This is episode 132 of Dad Awesome, and I am so thankful you're joining us today. I've got my coffee brewed. My almost 2-year-old daughter is doing nap time, and the other girls, my big girls and my wife, are out of the house. So here we are, recording episode 132. We're doing video this week, so if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for being awesome. Thanks for being on YouTube. By the way, YouTube, we're at like 55, what do they call that? Subscriptions. People that have hit subscribe on YouTube, the Dad Awesome YouTube channel. It'll be linked in the show notes. But man, if you're listening and you haven't jumped over and subscribed to our YouTube channel, I would be super grateful. So hop over, subscribe. This week, this is Dad Notes. It's the fifth Thursday in July, episode 132. So we're calling this Dad Notes, short and sweet. I've got my coffee brewed. I'm ready to talk fast, and we're going to dive right in. So my name is Jeff Zog, and welcome to Dad Awesome. The sponsor this week, which is funny, me saying the sponsor. We don't do sponsors. We haven't done sponsors at Dad Awesome. But this week, Dad Notes, the sponsor is Fathers for the Fatherless. That's the 100-mile bike ride. I've been talking about this. You guys know about the 100-mile bike ride. We're riding a team of dads. There's close to 70 dads now on the team. There's 3 different teams. We got a team in Arkansas. We got 2 teams in Minnesota. We are riding 100 miles on August 29th for kids that don't have a dad, for the fatherless. It's dads doing something really hard for kids who don't have a dad, both around the world, and we got a local ministry here in Minneapolis, the Dwelling Place, that we're supporting. So I wanted to invite you guys in. Hey, would you guys support the Fathers for the Fatherless ride? I want to invite our podcast audience. Some of you have been like, man, how can I say thank you to Dad Awesome? How can I give to this ministry? Here's the way to give: a direct gift to the fatherless. So the link will be in the show notes here, but I'd love to invite you guys to give towards, just supporting this vision. So if you're not biking, would you give financially towards this? So that is the sponsor for episode 132. All right, game on. Let's get after it. This is Dad Notes. Again, we're looking at the last 4 episodes. I'm going to give you 4 little audio clips from the past 4 episodes of Dad Awesome, and then I'm going to elaborate on 4 takeaways from these episodes. So I'm going to come at you fast, bullet points. I'm going to give you 8 bullet points because we're dads and we got a lot going on. So here we go, jumping right into Dad Notes. Let's go after it. We're starting with episode 128, Wayne Francis from New York. I love this guy. Here's his first clip.
They're not just called out. Great daughters, great sons are not called out. They're carved out, which means that you have to understand that you're chiseling something over time, and you're polishing and you're finessing. And so it's a work of art when you're a dad that happens over a process of time. I think good dads realize that it's not how great you start, but it's how great you end up. And you really have to work through just having little conversations here and there.
And then here's my personal takeaway from Wayne Francis, episode 128. He talked about this idea of, am I the kind of man that I would pray for and want my daughters to walk down the aisle to marry someday? That perspective, game-changing, of us thinking ahead into the future. Am I the kind of dad, and this is, again, if you have daughters, but we can think about, hey, am I the kind of man that I want my sons to be best friends with someday or be a college roommate someday? Again, we are modeling for them the example of, if you have daughters, the kind of man that they're going to marry someday. So he also talked about words of life, and he actually, his wife, he called her classy instead of her, I forget actually her name, he calls her classy because it stuck. He labeled her classy in a fun, life-giving way. I call my wife, I call her Love. Often the girls, they don't know that I ever say the word Michelle, my wife's name. I just call her Love. Or I call my girls Sweet. Often I'll refer to them as Sweet. Or Kind Kiva, my daughter Kiva. I use Kind Kiva. I label her. So again, are we the kind of man who we want our daughters to walk down the aisle to? Am I being the kind of dad that I desire for my kids to be best friends with or even married to? And then secondly, like the label side of, am I labeling with life? Am I labeling my kids and my wife with life in a way that just makes them smile? Episode 129 was Scott Wilson. He's from Dallas, Texas, and here's the first clip from Scott Wilson.
Every night he told us the story that he called Johnny and his daddy. Johnny and his daddy. And what he would do is he would basically recap the whole day of everything we had done. And that was what Johnny and his dad did. So he did it in such a way that was like this. So he'd go, hey, Guess what happened? Today, Johnny and his daddy went to school. Then daddy dropped him off, and Johnny went out and said, bye, Dad, I love you. And Johnny's dad drove off and thought, man, that has got to be the finest young man I have ever seen in my life. And he just said, I don't even know what to do to tell that kid how much I love him. I wish I could just tell him. And he went to work, and about 10 times that day, all he thought about is, I can't wait to pick Johnny up. And then we picked him up and went home, and guess what we did? And I would say, I know what they did. I know what they did. He said, what? They played catch? That's right. How did you know? They played catch. Well, it's because what we did when we got home, whatever it was. Then they ate dinner. Then what did they do? They played pool. Yeah, exactly. That's what they did. They had the best time. When they went to bed, Johnny's dad went in there and sat down with him and just thought, man, this has got to be the greatest gift God ever gave me, to have a son like this. And that was the end of the day.
Man, I love that idea of the story of their day in a way that just helps our kids realize how much we love being their dad and just like how proud of them we are. So love that story. And he actually talks about in the episode, he flipped and told his dad right before his dad passed away and went to heaven. He told his dad the story of his day in a way that helped his dad realize how much he cared and loved. And powerful, powerful. So my personal takeaway from episode 129 with Scott Wilson was around hitting the golden buzzer. So he's got this analogy of like, hey, someone performs. This is from the reality, the singing competition show. This idea of, man, I'm going to be a dad that hits the golden buzzer and says, I believe in you. I believe you're going to go a long ways. You're talented. You have gifting. And man, I just want to be a dad who hits the golden buzzer and says, I'm for you. So if we do that with our life, with our words, with our smiles, with our eyes for our kids can feel when we're a dad that's like, I'm for you. Let's go to episode 130 with Josh Turner. Here's the first clip from him.
My son, when he turned 10, he and I went hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And we did 3 days together. I had I think it was like 20 men or 25 men in his life. Some of them were like my really good friends, his grandfathers, his children's pastor, youth pastor, write him letters about what they see in him and what it means to be a man of God. And so he and I, we, backpacked and with like the backpacks and the tents and all this stuff. And so every night I would give him these letters, and I would say, hey, I'm going to go get in the tent, and I just want you to read these letters. And, I'm kind of like thinking like, all right, he's 10 years old. Like, how much of this is going to we're going to get back. He's going to be like, I want to play video games. And, but we get back to this little hotel he and I were staying at the last night because neither of us could walk. I mean, dude, when you go from living in flat Florida to hiking the mountains with a 10-year-old, neither one of you are walking well. I'll never forget. He woke up. He goes, why do my legs feel this way? And, but we got to the hotel and he asked me, he said, hey, can I have your phone? And I said, yeah. I go, what you need my phone for? He goes, I want to text all the men that wrote me letters.
So I was just challenged to be like, man, do I have my wife and I, are we creating relationships for our girls in a way that they've seen and can call out and invite them to speak words and write words that would actually draw out the kind of young women that we pray that our daughters would be. So I love that concept. It was from a book, Raising a Modern Day Knight, that he got that idea of doing a getaway and writing letters. So highly recommend that book. My personal takeaway from episode 130 with Josh Turner was around a realization of what's the most important thing. And he just realized in this young kid season, he was giving way too much of himself to ministry. He was giving way too much of himself to pastoring, to job, to things outside of the home. And he's just like, man, that is kryptonite when we realize that we're giving too much to something else and not enough to the thing that's the most important. You're the only dad in the world to your kids. You're the only dad. You're the only husband in the world to your wife. You are the only. It's the things that we're the only. And man, he's just like, man, if he could help realize, leave work there, leave ministry there, and be present at home. And guys, we need to hear that over and over. And lastly, episode 131. And again, this is dadNOTES, so I'm coming at you bullet points here. Episode 131 with Jason Valentin just dropped last week, and here's a clip from Jason.
Yeah, when I was about 13 years old, 12 or 13, I was sitting around the dinner table, and my dad was telling me about David and his mighty men, and man, I was so stoked to hear those stories. So I'd listen to my dad talking to me about that, and my heart was just burning inside me. I said, Dad, that's what I want to do. He thought I wanted to kill lions and bears and, fight people, and which was great. Yeah, I want to do that. I lived out in the woods, but I want to restore broken men back to their original identity. Like that's what I said out of my mouth. Probably 6 months goes by, and it's a Wednesday night. And Wednesday nights all over the country, right? Our youth group night. I hated youth group. Did not want to go to youth group. It was so boring. So I remember sitting my dad down saying, hey, I need to talk to you. I don't want to go to youth group this week. And he said, why not? And I was like, oh, it's really boring. My dad hates boring meetings. So I thought, okay, I can convince him, it's really boring. There's non-Christians that come. I'm just trying to use my 12-year-old brain to convince my dad. Have you studied the long-term effects of boredom on kids? It's devastating. And he looked at me and he said, son, it sounds like you're going for yourself. And I was like, I interpreted that as, that's a good thing. You're going for yourself. You probably shouldn't be there. And I was like, yeah, I think I am. And he said, son, that's the lowest level of living for a Christian. I still remember to this day what he said. That's the lowest level of living for a Christian. I was crushed. I realized in that moment, like, my dad thinks that, like, he thinks I'm living on the lowest level. I was like, oh my gosh. He said, look at me, son. So I looked at him. This will give insight into how those relationships have worked my whole life. He said, look at me. So I look at him, I'm crushed. One moment I'm crushed. He said, people need what you have. They need what you have. You need to go to youth group and find someone that needs what you have and give it to them.
My personal takeaway from episode 131 with Jason Valentin is around spiritual fathers and around brotherhood. And I'm just so thankful for the way he unpacked the forming and creating relationships, people inviting people in to be spiritual fathers, and the way he talks, kind of outlines how that process works. And then he talked about brotherhood as well and friends in his life and how powerful it was. His friends helped him actually grow through valley seasons versus them just be hard valley seasons. And he wrote this in his book, great opportunity comes with every hard season for those who have eyes to see it. We need friendships. We need mentors to help us have eyes to see it. For me, the guys in my life, my closest friends are guys who I developed those relationships, not from asking them, hey, will you be my accountability partner for the next year? That's not how I developed those close friendships. I, as often as possible, put myself around other guys who I wanted to become close friends with. So proximity was a big deal. And then I actually pursued the guys that my closest buddies, my closest guy friends, I pursued them from a pure mentorship standpoint. And I want to encourage you guys to try this. I saw something in them, whether it was their marriage or the way they handle their finances or their handiness with working on projects or their leadership or, their parenting or other aspects of their life. And I said, I admire something about you. Would you meet up with me for a cup of coffee? Or can we go for a run together? I just want to learn from you. I want to hear more about that area. So I actually went from a pure mentor standpoint versus a can we be friends standpoint. I want to encourage you guys, try this approach, because then you meet with them again a month later saying, I want to learn more about that thing. It might be fitness, might be working out. Who knows what the thing is, but guys, we got to be in proximity to other guys, and developing friendships can be awkward. So that's where the peer mentor approach has been really helpful for me. So just a little add-on nugget to brotherhood, and man, what a big deal. So those are the 4 interviews. We're calling this Dad Notes. Again, it's bullet points. It's a clip and then a takeaway from me for each episode. Just hoping to help you guys catch up. It's summer and life is busy. So I'm giving you guys these 8 bullet points to take away. In the show notes is going to kind of highlight all 8 of those takeaway points. Again, I joked about that this episode is brought to you by Fathers for the Fatherless bike ride. So I kind of gave a little cheers to that at the front end of this episode, but thanks for your support. We're in the fundraising season right now. We're 35 days away from us riding 100 miles. It's a group of dads, close to 70 dads riding for the fatherless. So I want to invite you guys into giving financially towards that vision. Our prayer is to raise $100,000 for these partner ministries, an orphanage, and then an amazing women's shelter here in the Twin Cities that helps women who have been harmed by a dad, a husband in their life. So I am so thankful for you guys watching. Thanks for, again, YouTube. Thanks for subscribing to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate those subscriptions. Thanks for your ratings, reviews. Thanks for sharing Dad Awesome with others. And again, this has been episode 132. Thanks for being Dad Awesome.